The Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles has a sinister reputation. Over nearly a century of its existence, it has been the site of numerous tragedies and mysterious events. But even against the backdrop of this grim history, the case of Elisa Lam stands out. What happened to the 21-year-old Canadian student within the walls of the Cecil in 2013 still haunts those seeking the truth. The police investigated this case for a long time, but ultimately concluded that it was a suicide. However, there are far too many puzzling and suspicious elements in this story. It's all too easy to discern the outlines of a deliberate and brutal murder. So, what really happened to Elisa Lam? Why was her body found where it was found? And most importantly, who killed her and why, if it was indeed a murder? Today, we will try to unravel this mysterious story and separate facts from speculation. Elisa Lam, a 21-year-old girl originally from China, emigrated to Vancouver, Canada in 2003 with her family, consisting of her father, mother, and sister. Thanks to the large Chinese diaspora living in this city, adaptation was quick for all family members. Soon, the Lam family rented a small Chinese restaurant and led a quiet, measured life. According to regular patrons of the establishment and neighbors, the immigrant family was welcoming and friendly. Elisa, a brown-eyed girl with dark hair, was fluent in English, although she had vision problems. She was a first-year student at the University of British Columbia, which ranks 40th among 17,000 universities worldwide. The girl was responsible and hardworking, working part-time on weekends and evenings in clothing stores, and later got a job at a bank. Elisa loved to travel, and even the lack of company did not stop her. She independently visited Washington State, Ottawa, Toronto, and Niagara Falls. She dreamed of going to Los Angeles and Hollywood in the near future. In December 2012, Elisa broke up with her boyfriend, and already in January 2013, the diligent student received a Christmas bonus. She told her sister about her desire to go to America to gain new experiences and get rid of the negative feelings associated with the breakup. The funds were there, and the parents did not object. The solo journey began in San Diego, where Elisa arrived on January 22nd. And on the 26th, the girl arrived in Los Angeles and settled in the Cecil Hotel. It is worth pausing at this point and telling the story of the hotel chosen by Elisa. The Cecil was built in the 1920s. It was a 15-story building designed for wealthy people and businessmen. However, the owners later changed their policy, renting out rooms for long periods at low prices. The hotel's reputation rapidly declined. From a pretentious, fashionable establishment, the Cecil turned into a cheap hotel that barely reached 3 stars. The hotel has repeatedly become the final refuge for suicides. In 1954, Helen Gurney, exhausted from fighting a serious illness, threw herself out of a 7th-floor window. In 1962, Julia Moore also jumped from an 8th-floor window due to pregnancy by a man who refused to acknowledge the child and a difficult financial situation. Pauline Otten jumped from a 9th-floor window after an argument with her husband. She fell on top of Giorgi Giannini, a passerby. Both died on the spot. Another dark page in the hotel's history was the murder of guest Goldie Osgood, who was found in her room in 1964, brutally beaten and raped. This crime remains unsolved. After the Elisa Lam incident, journalists began to savor all these facts, calling the Cecil a hotbed of evil and otherworldly forces. But it is worth remembering that the hotel is located next to the troubled Skid Row area. In the 40s, half of all crimes in Los Angeles were committed there. This real tumor of the City of Angels attracted serial killers who simply wanted to be closer to their victims and get lost in the lists of cold cases. As for the suicides, everything is quite prosaic here as well. People who had financial and personal problems often stayed at the hotel with an unfortunate location and low prices. All suicide cases were investigated. Over 90 years of the Cecil's existence, only one murder occurred there, which is not that much. It is hardly possible to confidently state that the hotel is run by evil forces based on one case. This is a typical example of a cheap hotel where criminals and people with mental disorders sometimes stay. Finally, let's return to Elisa Lam. She checked into the hotel on January 26th and intended to leave on February 1st. According to the employees, the girl behaved normally, did not demand anything, and spent most of her time outside the hotel. So, it was not possible to establish exactly what Elisa was doing from January 26th to 29th. On the 29th, she left a text message on Tumblr. "I'm staying in a terrible hotel. By the word terrible, I mean tasteless. But it was built in 1928, it's Art Deco. So yeah, the hotel is cool. I think Baz Luhrmann should have filmed The Great Gatsby here." What Elisa did on January 30th is unknown. On the 31st, the staff saw her in the lobby. She was talking to her parents. Around noon, she visited a bookstore. On February 1st, Elisa did not call home. The girl had a particularly strong connection with her family. There was an agreement that she would call them every day, which she did with pleasure. After waiting until the evening of the first day of February, her father called Elisa himself. There was no answer. Then, around 8 in the evening, he called the reception. The duty manager reported that the stay at the hotel had expired on February 1st. Since the reservation was not extended, the staff vacated the room, and her belongings were waiting in the storage room. The manager did not know where their owner was. The Lam family immediately went to the nearest police station. An officer helped them file a report dated the 1st. On February 4th, the case from the Los Angeles Missing Persons Department almost immediately went to the Homicide and Major Crimes Division. The reason for this decision is unknown, as there was no data on the commission of crimes against Elisa Lam. Perhaps the police acted preemptively, or maybe they found coincidences with previous crimes. In any case, the disappearance of the Canadian student was handled by detectives from the most prestigious and competent criminal investigation unit. On February 5th, they arrived at the hotel. On the same day, 2 dog handlers with dogs were called in and began to inspect the building. They even checked the technical floor. This floor could be reached by elevator, but it was impossible to exit without a special key. The roof, which was locked with an electronic lock, was also checked. The opening was recorded on the hotel security alarm panel. There was no data on unauthorized opening or lock breakage. The police decided to play it safe. Search activities involving dogs did not yield any results. Elisa's fate remained unknown. Detectives seized video recordings from the hotel's surveillance cameras, ATMs in the lobby and neighboring buildings, and street camera footage. They had to analyze 800 hours of video recordings from January 31st and February 1st. While viewing the video recordings, the police came across a stunning find. The camera captured the missing girl in the elevator a few hours before her death. Other cameras did not record Elisa Lam leaving the hotel, so she remained inside. From the data that came from Canada, it became known about Elisa's diagnosed bipolar disorder. This is a veiled name for psychosis, which is characterized by an alternation of 2 states: lethargic, depressed, and excited active. The disease had a mild form, and according to the doctor, did not pose a danger to others or to Lam herself. She took medication with her on the trip. On February 19th, the story of the missing Canadian student made an incredible zigzag. On the evening before and the morning of the 19th, several hotel guests complained about an unpleasant smell and strange color of the water. The Cecil Hotel had a personal water tower, 4 tanks with a volume of approximately 7,500 liters each, installed on the roof to maintain hydraulic pressure in case of water supply interruptions. The plumber decided to start checking the water quality with them. Inside one of the tanks, half filled with water, he found a floating body. According to him, this happened at 10 in the morning. At 12:49, a patrol officer officially reported that he saw a naked female body in the water. At approximately 1 o'clock, a whole column of firefighters and police officers began to pull the corpse out of the tank. Residents of Los Angeles watched the operation live. The television broadcast was conducted from helicopters of several TV channels. In addition, a whole flock of reporters settled on the roofs of neighboring buildings and near the entrance to the hotel. At 3:45, the body was pulled out of the tank. At 4 o'clock, the identity of the deceased was established. It turned out to be Elisa Lam. No one doubted this. On the evening of the same day, all residents of the United States learned about the incident. In the water tank, where the female body swollen from decomposition was floating, they found black men's shorts size M, a green t-shirt size L, a set of black lace underwear, a pair of black sandals, a red fleece jacket size XS with a hood and zipper, a wristwatch, and a key card for the Cecil Hotel. The absence of important items is surprising: a wallet, phone, and glasses, which were never found either in the room or near the body. The autopsy, conducted by a forensic expert, brought quite intriguing results. Of the intravital bodily injuries, 2 skin defects were identified under the knees of both legs. Abrasions 2.5 centimeters long on the right leg and about 1 centimeter on the left. It was established that Elisa had sexual intercourse shortly before her death, and drowning did not fit the case of Elisa Lam's death at all. On the inner side of the eyelids and the sclera, there were pinpoint hemorrhages, a sign of mechanical airway obstruction. The nasal passages were not blocked. This meant that after the body was removed from the water, there was no abundant discharge of foamy liquid from the lungs, and the release of foam is a significant sign of death by drowning. There was no water in the lungs, which means there was no reflex inhalation underwater. The girl got into the tank without breathing or with weakened superficial breathing, but Elisa Lam's death was announced as a result of drowning. Thus, Lam's death, which was not a drowning, was still declared a drowning. The police seized the medications that Elisa Lam took on the trip. Trace amounts of drugs were found in the liver, but the peak of action had passed long before death. They did not cause the death. On June 21st, the Los Angeles police put a bold end to their investigation, concluding that Elisa Lam committed suicide due to an exacerbation of bipolar disorder. Law enforcement agencies chose the path of least resistance, blaming the victim herself. How familiar this is. I wonder when they will start punishing law enforcement officers for negligence and unwillingness. Despite the fact that the Los Angeles police put an end to the investigation, recognizing Elisa Lam's death as a suicide due to an exacerbation of bipolar disorder, the public was not quick to agree with this. There were too many strange and incomprehensible things in this story to simply take and believe the official version. Both journalists and people who were simply not indifferent to the event saw a mystical trail in it, the dark intervention of otherworldly forces. But is everything really so mysterious? Perhaps it is worth looking for a more rational explanation? Let's agree with the police conclusion for a minute and consider this case from the point of view of suicidology. People who are prone to suicide have certain characteristic signs of behavior that an experienced specialist will notice immediately. From 70% to 90% of potential suicides in one way or another inform their loved ones, relatives, friends, about their intentions. But Elisa Lam did nothing of the sort, no alarming conversations or hints. Most women and girls who try to commit suicide do not die the first time. They either get scared at the last moment or just want to attract attention to themselves. Usually, the second or third attempt becomes fatal, although some practice this much longer. But Elisa, as far as is known, did not have any previous suicide attempts at all. The main reason for suicide is unbearable mental and physical pain that a person seeks to get rid of at all costs. But Elisa had a completely legal and effective way to deal with this: individually selected medications that she took under the supervision of a doctor. Why would she kill herself if the suffering could be overcome with medication? By the way, about the doctor. Elisa was being treated by the well-known psychiatrist Sarah Scarf, who had an impeccable reputation and many years of experience. There were never any complaints about her work, which means the diagnosis and therapy were correct. And if Elisa really had suicidal tendencies, Sarah Scarf would certainly have noticed it. After all, suicides, even unconsciously, give a lot of signals that an experienced specialist recognizes unmistakably. But the doctor was so confident in the stable condition of her patient that she calmly let her go on an independent trip abroad. She hardly would have done this if she had the slightest doubts. Yes, Eliza took the medications prescribed to her. So what? This is not at all an indicator of abnormality, rather the opposite. A person who follows the doctor's recommendations and regularly takes medication is usually quite adequate, able to control emotions and cope with stress. Moreover, with bipolar disorder, there are never hallucinations or delusions. Toxicological examination showed that on the eve of her death, Eliza did not drink alcohol or use drugs, and this could have exacerbated the manifestations of the disease. Another argument against suicide is the complete nudity of the body. Women who commit suicide never undress, because even in the last minutes of their lives, the thought that someone will lustfully examine their bodies is unbearable for them. But according to the official version, it turns out that Eliza undressed completely, threw all her clothes into a tank of water, and jumped in there herself. Isn't that strange? Moreover, death by drowning is terrible and painful. If the girl really wanted to end her life, she would have chosen something faster and simpler. Well, at least a jump from the roof. Fortunately, she was there. By the way, guests of this hotel who committed suicide usually jumped from windows, not drowned. Perhaps the key to this strange story lies in the video that captured Elisa Lam's last minutes of life. The police released this recording on February 13th, but there is one nuance here. In fact, the camera took these shots not on January 31st between 2 and 3 o'clock, as officially stated, but in the first half of February 1st. This was done so that investigators could check the testimony of eyewitnesses about the girl's last day of life. That is, the recording that got on the internet is not the original. So, the recording that got on the internet and caused such a stir is not actually the original. Before making the video public, forensic experts worked on it a lot. Some fragments were slowed down, some were accelerated, the date and time were hidden, and individual moments were cut out. Perhaps this was done because someone who was next to Eliza in her last hours got into the frame, and the investigation decided to hide this information. But even from this castrated video, certain conclusions can be drawn. Let's start with the fact that the girl enters the elevator on the 14th, the highest of the residential floors. She leans towards the buttons, presses them along with the door hold button. She is wearing the same clothes that will later be found at the bottom of the water tank. There are no glasses or, it seems, contact lenses on her. Eliza has to lean over to see the numbers on the buttons. The girl's movements are unhurried. She calmly stands in the corner of the cab. Analysis of her nonverbal behavior proves that Eliza is in a relaxed state, not feeling fear or anxiety. This is evidenced by the position of her arms and legs. It seems that she is waiting for someone, but some time passes, and no one enters the elevator. Then, Eliza approaches the exit, quickly looks out into the corridor, presses herself against the wall, almost in the same place where she was standing before. And a second later, she abruptly steps towards the elevator control panel, presses her back against the wall, as if she wants to be in the zone of invisibility. This maneuver looks more playful than anxious. Body language reveals embarrassment, but not fear at all. However, no one looked into the elevator, so after a short wait, Eliza slowly looks out into the corridor again, watching the part of it to the right of the elevator. The girl glances to the left, probably assuming that the one she was waiting for had already passed while she was hiding in the corner. Then, she jumps out of the elevator on both legs. Experts regarded these actions as foolishness, a game. Eliza clearly did not feel danger and was not really hiding. Further, remaining in the corridor, the girl moves to the left edge of the doors and disappears from the camera's view for a moment. Then, in the frames, you can see the edge of her skirt and part of her shoulder. Eliza slowly raises her arms above her head. Most likely, she is fixing her hair. Analysts see these actions as an expression of sexual interest. Having dealt with her hair, she returns to the elevator. Her arms are widely spread. Lam is trying to calm down. She is in a state of strong emotional excitement. Many experts note that at this moment, Elisa, strange as it may seem, is laughing. The violent reaction is caused by the fact that someone made her laugh. Again, leaning towards the panel, Elisa begins to press the buttons with both hands. At the end, she presses the door hold again, makes a 1-second pause, and another series of pressing and holding. Having finished with the buttons, the girl exits the elevator, slowly fixing her hair. Opposite the exit is a mirror, and preening in front of it does not at all fit with fear or anxiety. When exiting, Elisa puts her elbows forward. This is how she tries to appear more confident. She stands to the left of the doorway, and although the resolution of the recording is low, experts discerned Lam is smiling. Perhaps not quite sincerely. Further, the analysis of nonverbal behavior records. The level of insincerity increases along with the level of anxiety. One of the markers is Elisa touching her shoulder with her fingertips. It is clearly visible how she leans over, as if talking to someone standing to the right of the elevator doors. At the same time, the girl actively gesticulates. Experts note excessive playfulness, a playful mood. There are no signs of fear. The eerie moment seems unnatural, only because it is here that the recording was slowed down. Let's not forget that it was worked on a lot. Elisa rises several times on the toes of her right foot. This indicates a remarkable optimism, maybe even joy. And again, sexual interest is noted. It all ends with the girl leaving the camera's field of view in the direction opposite to where her interlocutor was standing. The recording continues, and we see the elevator doors close and open twice. It is difficult to imagine that one can experience such emotions and perform such actions alone. As you know, mentally ill people, being in the grip of hallucinations, demonstrate specific motor skills. But nothing of the sort was observed in Elisa's behavior. Most likely, shortly before the described events, she met someone, perhaps even had a romantic relationship. On the video, the girl is playing hide-and-seek with her invisible companion. And although sometimes she shows some embarrassment, most likely, this is due to the fact that the acquaintance was short-lived, so Elisa felt a certain constraint and shyness. But definitely not fear. Almost throughout the entire recording, an element of play, flirting, sexual attraction is clearly visible in the girl's behavior. And only the realization that we are seeing her last minutes of life gives the video an eerie tinge. But in itself, this footage does not contain anything frightening. So, the conclusion suggests itself. There was someone else next to Elisa. Someone who knew about the surveillance camera in the elevator and carefully avoided its gaze. Someone who knew that, by some strange coincidence, the video surveillance in the corridor of the 14th floor, which usually worked constantly, was turned off this time. So this someone could freely communicate with Elisa without fear of being noticed. What happened next? Let's turn to the plan of the 14th floor. On it we see A. Smokeless fire escapes, B. Internal fire escapes, one of which leads to the technical floor and the other to the roof. The doors to the internal stairs are locked with an electronic lock. It is impossible to open them unnoticed by the security. At that time, no attempts to pass through these doors were recorded. There remain the smokeless stairs mounted on the outer walls of the hotel. They can be used to reach the roof without much effort. This has been repeatedly proven by bloggers and journalists who penetrated there in this way. There were no obstacles to this. Only desire and a little courage were needed. If you perceive this as a romantic adventure, especially in the company of a person to whom you feel sympathy, then it can even be fun. It is quite possible that such a proposal caused Elisa the joy that can be noticed in several moments of the video recording. Most likely, the girl met her future killer even before February 1st, and it is just as likely that she voluntarily agreed to intimate closeness with him, as well as to climb to the roof together. Maybe she even undressed of her own free will. Until some fatal moment, Elisa's relationship with her killer was playful and quite friendly. And then some incident provoked an acute conflict. Murderers often commit crimes under the influence of aggression that arises in response to actions or words that are unacceptable to them. For serial killers, this is doubly true. They attack not every potential victim, but only the one whose behavior seems offensive to them. It seems that Elisa's killer did not torture or mock her. Most likely, he used a chokehold with his forearm, a technique from which even an adult man loses consciousness in just 15 seconds. This method has two important features. Firstly, it does not leave visible traces, and secondly, it leads to rapid loss of consciousness without the ability to resist. Having strangled Elisa, the criminal raised her unconscious body to the tank roof using a ladder that was always stored there. This explains the absence of the girl's fingerprints on the stairs, and then, through the hatch, he lowered her into the water. Recall, Elisa was strangled, as indicated by pinpoint hemorrhages on the inner side of the eyelids and sclera found during the autopsy. At the same time, her mouth was not forcibly closed. Otherwise, there would have been injuries from the teeth on the inner side of the lips. No significant amount of water got into the lungs, which means there was no deep reflex inhalation underwater. Elisa ended up in the tank, either completely without breathing or with weakened superficial breathing. After that, the killer searched her clothes, taking the money, phone, and glasses. He had to get rid of the phone. It could have contained their correspondence and photos. He probably spent the money and kept the glasses as a trophy. Having searched the clothes, the criminal threw it into the same tank. He did not try to imitate suicide. He just hid the body. The person who killed Elisa Lam is cold-blooded, prudent, and has experience in such matters. Perhaps she had already committed similar crimes before. The killer perfectly understood what the police would pay attention to and how he should act in order to remain unnoticed. It is possible that he knew water will destroy biological traces. If you look at the circumstances of Elisa Lam's death without bias, it becomes obvious that this is not at all like suicide. Did the Los Angeles police investigators not understand this? No, they were perfectly aware of everything. It's just that the reason they decided not to open a criminal case was extremely pragmatic. After all, if there is a bullet, there must be a gun. If there is a stab wound, there must be a knife somewhere. This is how murders usually happen. But when there is something incomprehensible, vague, something that is difficult to prove, it is better to close the case at the stage of inquiry. Why waste effort and time on searches that may turn out to be in vain? Even if this murder was committed by a maniac, it is worth waiting for the next episode in order to understand the criminal's model of action. By the way, a similar crime occurred just a month later. In Los Angeles, even without Elisa Lam, there are enough murdered women. Police resources should not be spent on an investigation that is minimally likely to end in a court verdict. Statistics require an increase in crime detection rates. Elisa Lam's parents demanded compensation from the hotel for negligence. After all, unhindered access to the roof still exists. But negligence can be seen in this story literally in everything. Many questions remain for the investigation. Can we assert that everything happened exactly as described above? Of course not. This is just one version. Yes, there are huge databases that describe the typical behavior of murderers. They work well as an example. But can we say with certainty that the criminals who are caught are similar to those who are still at large? Perhaps the police catch those who have primitive motivation? What if they ended up behind bars precisely because of the predictability of their actions? It is quite probable that Elisa became the victim of someone whose actions cannot be explained. We can only hope that someday the truth will come out. So, summing up this eerie and mysterious story, I want to express my personal opinion. Despite the official version of the Los Angeles police, I am convinced that Elisa Lam was the victim of a murder. There are too many inconsistencies, strange coincidences, and incomprehensible details in this case that do not fit into the picture of suicide at all. Therefore, I urge you, dear viewers, to share your versions of what really happened to Eliza in the comments. Who, in your opinion, could be her killer? What was the motive for this crime? I will be glad to hear your guesses and assumptions. Perhaps by joint efforts we can get closer to unraveling this mystery. And most importantly, let's think about how to protect ourselves from such a tragedy. After all, what happened to Eliza can happen to anyone. Here are a few tips I would like to give you. Be careful with new acquaintances, especially when traveling. Do not trust people you do not know well, even if they seem nice and friendly. Always inform your family and friends where you are going and with whom. Send them photos of the people you communicate with, especially if you are going to go somewhere together. Do not agree to offers to go to deserted or unfamiliar places, even if it is presented to you as an exciting adventure. Trust your intuition. If it seems to you that something is wrong, that you are in danger, immediately leave from there. Call for help. Have self-defense means with you, pepper spray, a stun gun, etc., and be ready to use them if necessary. Of course, all this does not guarantee 100% safety, but following these rules significantly reduces the risk of ending up in a situation similar to the one Elisa Lam found herself in, and let her death become a lesson and a reminder for all of us. The world is full of dangers, and we must be ready to avoid them or fight back. Take care of yourself, be vigilant, and may the tragedy that happened to Eliza never happen to any of you. Thank you for your attention, and do not forget to write in the comments what you think about this story. Your opinion is very important. Together we can get closer to the truth.